The envelope sat on my desk for 3 days before I opened it. Heavy cream paper, embossed letterhead from Patterson and Associates. My hands had shaken the first time I picked it up. They shook now as I finally broke the seal. Mr. Blackwood, we request your presence at the reading of Margaret Elizabeth Blackwood's last will and testament. Friday, November 17th, 2 p.m. Margaret, gone 6 weeks now. Cervical cancer, stage 4 by the time they found it. She'd fought for 18 months, and I'd been there for every appointment, every treatment, every bad day. Well, as much as Victoria would allow. My daughter hadn't spoken to me in 20 years. Not really. Pleasantries at Christmas, maybe. Stilted conversation at Margaret's bedside those last weeks. But nothing real. Nothing that resembled the relationship we'd had before everything fell apart. I set the letter down and looked around my small apartment in Parkdale. 1 bedroom, kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. The radiator clanked and hissed. November in Toronto, and the landlord was already being stingy with the heat. At 65, I should have been in a better place. Should have had the corner office, the tenure, the pension I'd spent 30 years building. Instead, I had this. The phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, like I always did. But something made me check it this time. Mr. Blackwood, this is Jennifer Patterson, from Patterson and Associates. I wanted to confirm you received our letter regarding Margaret's estate. I know this is difficult, but your attendance is, well, it's quite important. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. My earliest convenience? I almost laughed, as if I had anywhere else to be on a Friday afternoon. I'd been retired for 5 years now. Retired was the polite term. The university had let me go quietly, gave me a small severance, asked me not to make a fuss. After what happened, they said it was generous that they didn't press charges. I should be grateful they were handling it internally. 20 years of teaching philosophy at the University of Toronto, building a reputation, publishing papers that actually mattered. Gone in 1 semester. 1 accusation. 1 decision I made that I'd been living with ever since. The decision that destroyed my relationship with Victoria. I called the lawyer back. Professional voice, kind but efficient. Yes, I'd be there. No, I didn't need directions. The office was on Bay Street, naturally. Victoria worked just 2 blocks away, at one of those glass tower firms where junior lawyers billed $400 an hour and senior partners drove German cars worth more than my annual income. Mr. Blackwood, Jennifer said, her voice careful. I should mention that Victoria will be attending as well, given that you'll both be there. I wanted to. It's fine, I said. We're adults. Of course. I just wanted you to be prepared. Prepared. As if 20 years of silence could prepare you for sitting in a room with your only child while a stranger read your dead wife's final wishes. Friday came too quickly and too slowly. I put on my one good suit, the charcoal gray one I'd bought for Margaret's funeral. It still smelled faintly of the chapel, that overwhelming mix of lilies and grief. The subway ride downtown took 40 minutes. I watched the stations slide past. Bathurst, Spadina, Street George, the university stop. I'd taken this route for decades, back when it led to lecture halls and office hours, and students who actually believed their professor when he talked about ethics and moral philosophy. The irony hadn't escaped me then. It didn't escape me now. Patterson and Associates occupied the 18th floor of a building where the lobby had marble floors and a doorman who looked at my worn suit with barely concealed disdain. The elevator was glass, offering a view of the city as it climbed. Toronto spread out below, cold and gray under November clouds. Lake Ontario, a dark smudge on the horizon. The reception area was exactly what I expected. Tasteful artwork, leather furniture, a receptionist who smiled with professional warmth that didn't reach her eyes. Thomas Blackwood, I said. I'm here for... Yes, Mr. Blackwood. Miss Patterson is expecting you. Conference room B, just down the hall. I walked slowly, buying time. Through the glass walls, I could see lawyers bent over desks, paralegals rushing past with files. The kind of busy, important work that Victoria did. The kind of success I used to imagine for her. Back when she'd sit in my office at the university, teenage Victoria, with her nose in a book, asking questions about Kant and Socrates, and whether there was ever a time when lying was the right thing to do. I'd told her the truth was always the right choice. And then I'd spent 20 years living a lie. Conference room B had a view of the financial district. Victoria was already there, sitting on one side of the long table, her posture perfect, her expression carefully neutral. 35 now. She looked like Margaret at that age. Same dark hair, same sharp cheekbones, same way of holding herself, like she was ready for battle. She glanced up when I entered. Our eyes met for half a second before she looked away. Mr. Blackwood, Jennifer Patterson stood, extending her hand. Mid-40s, I guessed, with the kind of competence that came from decades of managing other people's grief and greed. Thank you for coming. Please, sit wherever you're comfortable. I sat across from Victoria. The table between us might as well have been an ocean. Jennifer settled into her seat at the head of the table, opened a leather portfolio, and pulled out several documents. I appreciate you both being here. I know the last few months have been incredibly difficult. Margaret was a remarkable woman. Victoria's jaw tightened slightly. She'd been with Margaret at the end. I'd been there too, but in that way you're present without really being included. Standing by the door while Victoria held her mother's hand. Listening to them talk about memories I wasn't part of anymore. That last week, when Margaret could barely speak, Victoria had whispered something that made her mother smile. I never knew what it was. Before we begin, Jennifer continued, I want to explain the structure of Margaret's estate. As you both know, Margaret was quite successful in her career. Her work as a clinical psychologist, her published research, her private practice, all contributed to a substantial estate valued at approximately $12 million. Victoria didn't react. She'd probably expected something like that. Margaret had been brilliant, dedicated, and after I was gone from the picture, free to build the kind of career she'd always been capable of. The estate includes the house in Forest Hill, investment portfolios, her practice, and various other assets. However, Margaret's will is somewhat unconventional. She left very specific instructions, including a letter she wanted me to read to you both before we proceed with the formal distribution. Jennifer pulled out an envelope. Heavier paper, the kind Margaret always used for important things. I recognized her handwriting on the front. To be read to Thomas and Victoria together. My throat tightened. Would you like me to proceed? Jennifer asked gently. Victoria nodded once, crisp and controlled. I managed a quiet yes. Jennifer opened the envelope carefully, unfolded the pages inside. Margaret's handwriting filled them, that precise script I'd seen on grocery lists and lecture notes and, once, on divorce papers. My dearest Victoria and Thomas, Jennifer began, reading in a steady voice that somehow made it worse. If you're hearing this, I'm gone, and you're sitting in that conference room together, probably not speaking, probably not looking at each other. I've watched you both for 20 years, carrying this weight, and I can't let it continue into whatever comes after I'm gone. Victoria shifted in her seat. Victoria, you've built an incredible life. You're brilliant, successful, everything I knew you would be. But you've built it on a foundation of anger toward your father that was never his fault. And Thomas, you've lived these 20 years in silence, accepting blame you never deserved. And I let you do it because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my career, my reputation, my daughter's respect. That fear made me cruel in ways I've regretted every single day. My hands were gripping the edge of the table. Jennifer paused, glanced at us both, then continued. 20 years ago, when Victoria was 15, I made a terrible mistake. I plagiarized research for my doctoral thesis. Not all of it, but enough. Enough that if it had come out, I would have lost everything. I'd worked on a study with a colleague, Dr. Sarah Chen, and when our collaboration ended poorly, I took her work. I incorporated it into my thesis without proper attribution. I told myself it was justified, that she'd abandoned the project, that I'd done most of the work anyway. But it was theft, academic fraud. Victoria's face had gone very still. Sarah found out. She was going to report me to the university, to the academic review board. My entire career, my degree, everything was about to collapse. And Victoria, you were in high school, so proud of your mother, the professor, telling all your friends about how I was publishing research, how I was going to change the field of developmental psychology. I couldn't bear the thought of you finding out what I'd done. The radiator in the corner hissed softly. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere in the financial district. Thomas knew. We'd been married 15 years by then, and he saw the signs, saw me panicking, saw the letters from Sarah, saw me falling apart. I told him everything. And do you know what he did? I closed my eyes. He took the blame. He went to the department head and confessed to plagiarizing his own research. Same year, different paper. But the timing was close enough that it confused everything. Thomas had a solid reputation, publications going back years. When he confessed to academic misconduct, the university investigated him, not me. They were so focused on the philosophy department scandal that they never looked closely at psychology. Dad? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. I couldn't look at her. The university gave Thomas a choice. Jennifer continued reading. Resign quietly, or they'd pursue formal charges. He resigned, lost his tenure, his pension, everything. And I let him do it. I let him sacrifice his entire career to save mine. And then, Victoria, when you found out about the plagiarism scandal, when you were so angry and disgusted, I let you believe it was about your father. I never corrected you. I let you hate him for something I did. Victoria's chair scraped against the floor as she stood abruptly, walked to the window, her back to us. Thomas and I divorced a year later, not because I was angry at him, because I couldn't stand to look at him every day and remember what I'd done, what I'd let happen. The guilt was unbearable. So, I pushed him away. I filed for divorce. I took the house. I built my career on the foundation of his sacrifice, and I let our daughter believe her father was a fraud and a liar. My eyes were burning. For 20 years, I watched you both. Thomas, you never defended yourself. You never told Victoria the truth, even when she wouldn't speak to you, even when she graduated university and you weren't invited, even when she got married and you found out from a colleague who saw the announcement in the paper. You honored the choice you made, even though it cost you everything. I heard Victoria make a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. And Victoria, my brilliant daughter, you built walls so high, so strong, that you couldn't see the man on the other side. Couldn't see that your father loved you more than his own reputation, his own career, his own happiness. I tried to tell you, so many times, but I was a coward. Right up until the end, I was a coward. Jennifer's voice wavered slightly, but she pressed on. This cancer, this dying, it does something to you. It strips away all the pretense, all the fear about what people think. At the end, all I wanted was for you both to know the truth. Victoria, your father is the most honorable man I've ever known. He gave up everything to protect me, and then he gave up even more to protect you. He knew that if the truth came out, you'd blame yourself for not seeing it, for hating him, for all those years of silence. So he kept the secret, even from you. Victoria turned around. Tears were streaming down her face. Thomas, I'm sorry. I'm so deeply sorry for what I took from you, for what I let you lose, for 20 years of silence and sacrifice that should never have been yours to carry. You deserved better. You deserved honesty, support, gratitude. Instead, I gave you divorce papers and let you disappear into an apartment in Parkdale while I lived in the house you paid for, built the career you saved, and raised the daughter who wouldn't speak to you. I couldn't breathe properly. The room felt too small, too warm. Victoria, I'm sorry for lying to you, for letting you grow up believing your father was something he wasn't, for allowing you to carry anger that should have been directed at me, for stealing 20 years of a relationship you both deserved. I can't give those years back, but I can give you the truth. Finally, completely. Everything else in this will is just money and property. This is the inheritance that actually matters. Jennifer set down the first page, picked up the second. Now, as for the distribution of my estate, Victoria, I'm leaving you $1. Victoria's head snapped toward the lawyer. Not because I don't love you, not because you don't deserve security or comfort, but because you don't need my money to be successful. You've built your own career, your own life. You're a senior partner at one of the best firms in Toronto. You're brilliant and capable, and you'll be fine. Jennifer glanced up at Victoria, who looked like she'd been slapped. Thomas, I'm leaving you everything else. The house, the investments, the practice, all of it. Approximately $12 million. The room spun slightly. Use it however you want. Donate it all to charity, if that's what your ethics demand. Buy a better apartment, with heat that actually works. Travel to all those places we talked about visiting before everything fell apart. But Thomas, please, use some of it to rebuild a life that I stole from you. You're 65. You deserve to have something for the years you have left. My vision blurred. There's one condition. The house in Forest Hill, the one where we raised Victoria, where we were a family before I destroyed it. I want you both to go through it together. Not with lawyers or movers, just you two. There are boxes in the attic, letters I wrote over the years but never sent. Photos from when Victoria was little, before everything happened. Memories of when we were happy. Victoria was crying openly now, not bothering to wipe her face. Victoria, I know you're angry. At me, at this situation, at finding out that everything you believed for 20 years was a lie. But please, give your father a chance. Talk to him. Listen to him. Let him explain why he did what he did. Let him be the father he always was, but never got credit for being. And Thomas, please forgive me. Forgive me for being weak, for being selfish, for taking 20 years of your life and giving you nothing in return but pain and silence. You once told Victoria that the truth was always the right choice. You were right. I should have chosen truth 20 years ago. I'm choosing it now, too late, but finally. Jennifer set down the page gently. The letter ends there. Margaret signed it 3 weeks before she passed. She was very clear that I was to read it to you both, together, before proceeding with any legal formalities. The silence in the room was absolute. Even the city sounds seemed muted, distant. I looked at Victoria, really looked at her for the first time in 2 decades. She was looking back at me, her face wet, her expression shattered. "Dad," she whispered. "Dad, You didn't know," I said. My voice sounded strange, rough. "You couldn't have known, but I should have." She moved toward me, hesitant, like approaching something breakable. 20 years. 20 years I wouldn't talk to you, wouldn't let you explain. I was so angry, so convinced that you'd betrayed everything you taught me about integrity and truth. And the whole time, you were living those values. You were protecting Mum, protecting me. You were 15, I said. Your mother and I, we made adult decisions. We never should have let you carry the weight of them. But you did. You carried all of it. She was standing right in front of me now. You lost everything, your job, your reputation, your family. And you never once defended yourself. Why? Why didn't you tell me? I stood slowly, my knees protesting. 65, and I felt every year of it. Because your mother asked me not to. And because if you knew the truth, you'd blame yourself. For not seeing it. For being angry at the wrong person. I couldn't let you carry that guilt. Better you hate me than hate yourself. That's not better. Her voice broke. That's not better at all. Maybe not. But it's what I chose. Jennifer cleared her throat softly. I'll give you both some time. The formal paperwork can wait. Take all the time you need. She left the conference room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. Victoria and I stood there, 3 feet apart, a distance that felt like 20 years. I got married, she said suddenly, 4 years ago. His name is David. He's a good man, works in environmental law, volunteers on weekends, makes terrible jokes. You'd like him. I'm sure I would. We have a daughter. Emma. She's 2. Victoria pulled out her phone with shaking hands, pulled up a photo. A little girl with dark curls and Margaret's eyes, laughing in a park somewhere, leaves scattered around her. My granddaughter. I had a granddaughter. She's beautiful, I managed. She asks about you sometimes. Sees photos at Grandma Margaret's house. Asks who the man is. I told her you were. I told her we didn't talk anymore. She wanted to know why, and I didn't have a good answer. Because Grandpa did something bad didn't feel true anymore, even before this. Even before Mom got sick, I'd started wondering if maybe I'd been wrong, if maybe there was more to the story. There was always more to the story. But you never told it. No, I didn't. She wiped her eyes, tried to compose herself, then gave up and just cried. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for 20 years of not listening, not calling, not being there. For my wedding, for Emma's birth, for all the moments you missed because I was too stubborn and angry to ask questions. Victoria. No, let me say this, please. She took a shaky breath. I became a lawyer because of you. Because you taught me to care about justice, about truth, about standing up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. And the whole time, you were the one who needed someone to stand up for you, and I wasn't there. I was so busy being angry that I couldn't see you were the victim in all this. I reached out, hesitant, and touched her shoulder. She collapsed into me, and I held my daughter for the first time in 20 years while she sobbed against my worn suit jacket. I missed you, I said into her hair. Every day, every single day, I missed you. I missed you too. I just didn't let myself admit it. We stood like that for a long time, making up for 2 decades of distance with one embrace. Outside, the city moved on. Cars honked, people rushed to meetings, the world continued turning. But in that conference room on the 18th floor, time had stopped. Eventually, Victoria pulled back, wiping her face with the sleeve of her expensive blazer. The house. Mom wanted us to go through it together. We don't have to. If it's too much, I want to. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. I want to hear about everything, about what really happened, about the last 20 years, about all the things I missed. And I want you to meet Emma. And David, I want you to be part of our lives, if you'll let me make up for lost time. There's nothing to make up for. There's everything to make up for. She managed a small smile. But maybe we can start with the house. This weekend? This weekend, I agreed. Jennifer came back in after we'd both composed ourselves, bringing water and tissues and the kind of gentle professionalism that probably came from handling family drama on a regular basis. We went through the formalities, signed papers, established timelines. Victoria didn't argue about the will, didn't try to contest it or demand her share. She just sat there, occasionally glancing at me like she was checking to make sure I was real, that this was happening. When we finally left the office, the sun was setting over Toronto, painting the glass towers gold and pink. We walked out together, and at the elevator, Victoria hesitated. Do you have plans? For dinner, I mean. David's working late, Emma's with my mother-in-law. We could get coffee, or something stronger, talk more. I'd like that. We ended up at a small Italian place in the financial district, the kind of restaurant where lawyers took clients and charged it to expense accounts. Victoria ordered wine. I got the same. The waiter brought bread and olive oil, and we sat across from each other in a booth by the window, watching the city lights come on. Tell me about teaching, Victoria said. What was it like? Before everything happened, what did you love about it? So I told her. About the students who came to office hours with questions about Socrates, about the girl who wrote her thesis on Kierkegaard and ended up at Oxford, about the semester I taught a course on ethics and medical decision-making that had pre-med students rethinking their entire futures. I told her about the colleague who used to bring donuts to faculty meetings, about the time I accidentally set off the fire alarm during a lecture on Plato's cave allegory, about all the small, ordinary moments that made up a career I'd loved. And she told me about law school, about her first case, about making partner at 32, about meeting David at a fundraiser, about Emma's birth, about buying a house in the beaches and trying to figure out work-life balance while managing corporate litigation. She showed me more photos, videos of Emma learning to walk, babbling in that toddler language that wasn't quite words yet. We talked until the restaurant started closing, until the waiter had refilled our water glasses 3 times and was clearly hoping we'd leave. We walked out into the cold November night, and Victoria called a cab for me even though I tried to tell her the subway was fine. "Dad," she said as the cab pulled up, "thank you. For everything. For what you did 20 years ago. For letting me be angry without fighting back. For being here today. Thank you for listening." She hugged me again, quick and fierce. "This weekend, Saturday morning, we'll meet at the house? I'll be there." I watched her walk away, back toward her office to grab files before heading home. My daughter. My brilliant, successful daughter, who I was getting a second chance to know. The cab driver asked where I was going, and I gave him my address in Parkdale. As we drove through the city, past the university where I used to teach, past the neighborhood where Victoria and I used to live, I thought about Margaret, about her courage at the end, about finally telling the truth she'd held back for 20 years, about forgiveness and sacrifice and the complicated math of love. Saturday morning, I stood in front of the house in Forest Hill. 3 stories, brick facade, the kind of place Victoria had grown up in, where we'd been a family once. The key Jennifer had given me felt heavy in my pocket. Victoria pulled up 10 minutes later, David and Emma with her. Emma was in a puffy pink jacket, holding a stuffed rabbit, staring at me with curious dark eyes. "Emma," Victoria said gently, crouching down, "this is Grandpa Thomas. He's Grandma Margaret's. He's my dad. Can you say hi?" "Hi," Emma whispered, then hid behind David's legs. David extended his hand. "It's good to finally meet you, sir. Victoria's told me a lot about you." "All true, I'm sure," I said, shaking his hand. "The good parts," David said with a kind smile. We went inside together. The house smelled like Margaret, that subtle perfume she always wore mixed with books and coffee. Everything was exactly how I remembered it, and completely different. Different furniture, different art on the walls, evidence of a life I hadn't been part of. Victoria led us upstairs to the attic. Boxes stacked neatly, each one labeled in Margaret's handwriting. Victoria, Elementary School. Family photos, 1995 to 2004. Letters to Thomas. That last box sat separate from the others, tied with string. "You should read them," Victoria said softly. "She wanted you to." I sat on an old trunk while Victoria and David took Emma back downstairs to explore. I opened the box carefully. Letters, dozens of them, each one dated, never sent. "Dear Thomas, it's been 3 months since you left. Victoria asked about you today. I didn't know what to tell her. I miss you. I'm sorry. Margaret." "Dear Thomas, Victoria graduated top of her class. You would have been so proud. I wish you could have been there. I wish I hadn't taken that from you. Margaret." "Dear Thomas, I'm getting remarried. His name is Peter. He's kind, stable, everything I should want. But he's not you. Nothing feels right about this. But I can't keep living in this empty house, rattling around with my guilt. I hope you're okay. I hope you've found some kind of happiness. Margaret." "Dear Thomas, the wedding's off. I couldn't do it. Couldn't stand at an altar and promise forever to someone when I destroyed forever with you. Victoria thinks I'm being difficult. She doesn't understand. How could she? She doesn't know what I took from you. From us. Margaret." Letter after letter, spanning 20 years. Margaret's guilt, her regret, her updates on Victoria's life that she knew I'd want to hear. Graduations, promotions, the wedding she didn't invite me to, Emma's birth. All of it chronicled in letters she wrote but never sent, kept in a box in the attic like a confession she couldn't quite make. The last letter was dated a month before she died. "Dear Thomas, I'm dying. The doctors give me weeks, maybe a month if I'm lucky. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of leaving without telling the truth, without giving you back the years I stole. I wrote a letter for the lawyer to read. I'm going to make sure Victoria knows everything. I'm going to make sure you get something, anything, to make up for what you lost. It won't be enough. Nothing could be enough. But it's what I can do. I loved you, Thomas. I still do. I never stopped. I just didn't know how to live with what I'd done to you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Forever yours, Margaret." I sat there, holding 20 years of unsent apologies, and cried for everything we'd lost. For the marriage that ended not because we stopped loving each other, but because guilt made it impossible to stay. For the daughter who'd spent 2 decades angry at the wrong parent. For Margaret, brilliant and flawed and human, who'd made one terrible mistake and spent the rest of her life trying to live with it. Victoria found me later, still in the attic, surrounded by letters. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I don't know. Ask me in a few days." She sat beside me on the trunk. "She loved you, even after the divorce, even after everything. She talked about you sometimes, when I was older. Never told me the truth, but I could tell she regretted losing you. I never stopped loving her either. That was the hardest part. Being angry would have been easier." We sat in silence for a while, surrounded by boxes of memories, evidence of a family that had fractured and somehow, impossibly, was beginning to heal. "What will you do?" Victoria asked. "With the money, with the house?" Jennifer said, "It's all yours." "I don't know yet. It doesn't feel real. $12 million. I've been living on a pension, barely enough for rent and groceries, and now I trailed off. You could do anything. Travel, buy a place somewhere warm, fund a scholarship at the university. Anything. Maybe. Or maybe I'll just fix the radiator in my apartment and save the rest for Emma's education." Victoria laughed, a small broken sound. "Don't you dare. Use it for yourself. Please. You've earned it 1,000 times over." Downstairs we heard Emma laughing, David playing some kind of game with her. Normal family sounds, the kind I'd missed for 20 years. "I'd like to meet her properly," I said. "Emma. Get to know her, if that's okay." "It's more than okay. She needs her grandpa." Victoria's voice caught. "We both do." Over the next few weeks, we fell into a routine. Saturday mornings at the house in Forest Hill, going through boxes, sorting memories, telling stories. Victoria learned about the father she thought she knew but hadn't. I learned about the woman my daughter had become. David joined us sometimes, Emma always. The little girl, slowly warming up to the grandfather she'd never known she was missing. I kept the house. Couldn't bring myself to sell it, not yet. Instead, I hired someone to fix it up, make it livable again. Victoria suggested turning it into something useful, maybe a space for academic discussions or community events, something Margaret would have approved of. I also started a foundation, the Margaret Blackwood Foundation for Academic Integrity and Second Chances. It funded research ethics programs, but also provided support for academics who'd made mistakes and were trying to rebuild their careers. Margaret would have appreciated the irony. She'd also have approved of the mission. 3 months after the will reading, Victoria and I stood in the renovated house for its opening event. Local professors, students, community members, all gathered to celebrate scholarship and redemption. Emma ran around the first floor, delighted by the space and attention, while David tried to keep her from knocking over the catering. "Mum would have loved this," Victoria said, looking around at the crowd. "She would have. Do you forgive her? For everything?" I thought about it, about 20 years of silence, of sacrifice, of loving someone who'd hurt me deeply, and never quite knowing how to reconcile those feelings. "I forgive her," I said finally. "But more than that, I understand her. She made a mistake, a bad one, and then she made another, trying to cover it up. That first lie led to 20 years of consequences she never intended. But at the end, she chose truth. She gave us both a gift, even if it came too late for her to see what we'd do with it." Victoria nodded, eyes bright. "She gave us back to each other." "Yes, she did." Emma ran over, grabbed Victoria's hand, then mine. "Grandpa, come see the books. They have pictures." I let my granddaughter pull me toward the library, Victoria following close behind, and thought about what Margaret had written in that last letter. About inheritance that wasn't money or property, but truth. About second chances that came 20 years too late and somehow still managed to arrive exactly when they were needed. About being far more than the worst thing we'd ever done. The evening wound down slowly. Guests left with promises to return for future events. Emma fell asleep in David's arms, worn out from running and excitement. Victoria and I stood in the foyer, looking at the house that had held so much pain and was now, slowly, being filled with new memories. "Thank you," Victoria said quietly, for giving Mum up your career, for keeping her secret, for giving me 20 more years with a mother I respected instead of knowing the truth and losing that. I know you didn't do it for thanks, but thank you anyway. I did it because I loved you both. That's all. That's everything. She hugged me, and over her shoulder, I caught sight of a photo on the wall. Margaret, young and laughing, from before everything fell apart. Before the lie, before the sacrifice, before the 20 years of distance. She looked happy, full of promise, the woman I'd fallen in love with, the woman I'd protected, the woman who'd finally given me back my daughter. She'd be proud of you, I said, of the lawyer you became, the mother you are. She'd be proud of both of us, I think, for finding our way back to each other. I hope so. We locked up the house together, Victoria promising to visit Tuesday with Emma. I watched them drive away, then walked to my car, an upgrade from the old beater I'd been driving. Not a luxury vehicle, nothing flashy, just something reliable with heat that actually worked. The city was quiet, peaceful in that way Toronto gets on Saturday nights when the business district empties out. I drove through streets I knew by heart, past the university where I'd once taught, past the apartment in Parkdale I still hadn't left. Even though I could afford better now. Maybe I'd move. Maybe I'd stay. I had time to figure it out. Time and a second chance I never expected. Time and a daughter who was speaking to me again. Time and a granddaughter who called me grandpa and meant it. Time and the truth. Finally, after 20 years of silence, Margaret had been right about one thing. The inheritance that actually mattered wasn't the money or the house or any of the material things she'd left behind. It was this, the truth that set us free, the forgiveness that let us heal, the love that survived everything we'd done to try to destroy it. I drove home through the quiet streets, and for the first time in 20 years, I felt like maybe I was finally heading in the right direction.